Right now, you're probably doing that little shuffle. You know the one. You get up from the couch to grab water and you hear it. Nails on the floor behind you. Click, click. You walk to the bathroom and there he is, nose pressed against the door. You duck into the laundry room for 30 seconds and your dog acts like you've left the country. If you live with a shadow dog, you don't need me to describe this. You're living it right now, possibly while reading this. And I'd bet you've already been given an explanation. He's got separation anxiety. She's just clingy. He's spoiled. She just wants food. That last one is the popular theory. The story goes that we made pet dogs so soft, so dependent, so obsessed with snacks, that they can't function unless they're watching us open the refrigerator. And sure, food helps. I'm not going to sit here and tell you your Labrador isn't quietly monitoring the cheese situation. But that story gets the history backwards. Your dog isn't following you because we broke him with love and treats over the last 50 years. He's following you because his ancestors figured out tens of thousands of years ago that staying close to a human was the single best survival strategy on the planet. This isn't neediness. It's archaeology. It's living history, padding along behind you in real time. Long before there were tennis balls, memory foam dog beds, and sweaters for chihuahuas that cost more than your own jacket, there were wolves. And a few of them made a very strange decision. They decided not to run. So let's go back. Actually back to before following was cute, when it was closer to a matter of life and death. Picture a human camp roughly 30,000 years ago, somewhere in the late Pleistocene. It's cold. It's loud. It smells like smoke and rotting bone. At the edge of the firelight sits a pile of scraps, and most wolves want absolutely nothing to do with any of it. Every instinct says, stay away, survive. But a few wolves are different, a little less afraid, a little more willing to tolerate the noise, the shouting, the unpredictable two-legged animals hurling things into the fire. They creep a little closer. They don't bolt when a human yells. They start hanging around the edge of the light. Researchers like Brian Hare and the late Raymond Coppinger call this the self-domestication idea. Not that humans marched into the forest and kidnapped wolf puppies to raise by hand, but that the calmest, most tolerant wolves essentially domesticated themselves because proximity to us turned out to be a better bet than a lifetime alone in the woods. It's still debated exactly when and where this started. Some contested remains, like a skull from Goyet Cave in Belgium, have been dated to as old as 36,000 years, though most archaeologists aren't convinced that one belongs to a true dog. What almost everyone agrees on is simpler. For thousands of years, the wolves who could tolerate being near people ate better. They lived longer, and eventually they weren't quite wolves anymore. We have proof of exactly when that closeness turned into something more. In 1914, workers in Bonn-Oberkassel, Germany, uncovered a grave. Inside were two humans and a dog. Not a wolf, a dog. Dated to roughly 14,200 years ago. And this wasn't just any dog. A 2018 study led by Luc Janssens examined the remains and found that this animal had been sick as a puppy, likely canine distemper, for weeks before it died. A sickness like that doesn't just pass quietly. It would have needed warmth, food brought to it, someone checking on it over and over while it was too weak to be useful for anything at all. Someone looked after it anyway. Think about what that means. This wasn't a wild animal hovering at the edge of camp for scraps. This was a decision. People chose to keep this animal close, even when it was, by any practical measure, a burden. That's the moment the campfire changed everything. Early dogs weren't just following humans because food got dropped. They were following because the camp was safety. It was warmth. It was, in every sense that mattered, their social group. Following stopped being about scavenging. It started being about belonging. Here's the thing worth sitting with. Your dog trotting behind you to the kitchen tonight is running the exact same program that sick puppies' ancestors were running around a fire 14,000 years ago. Stay near the human. Stay alive. Your dog learned to stay before he ever fully learned how to be a dog. But there's a difference between wanting to be near you and obsessively tracking your every move through the house. Wanting closeness is step one. What comes next is where it gets interesting. Because dogs didn't stay generalized wanderers on the edge of human life for long. They started getting jobs. Take the Natufian burial site at Ain Malaha, in what's now northern Israel. About 12,000 years ago, archaeologists uncovered the remains of an elderly, physically disabled person, buried with one hand resting gently on a small puppy. That's not a tool. That's not livestock. That's a companion, laid to rest like family. And notice something important. This puppy wasn't buried near the person. It was buried touching them. Already dogs were sleeping where humans slept, close enough to matter in death as well as life. But affection alone doesn't explain what came next. Because dogs were about to become something the ancient world genuinely could not survive without. Around the eastern Mediterranean, in what's now northern Arabia, we get a very different kind of evidence. Not bones, but pictures. Rock art carved into stone at the sites of Shawamis and Juba, dating to roughly the 7th and possibly 8th millennium BC, shows dogs actively working hunting scenes alongside humans. Researchers studying these sites identified 147 separate hunting scenes depicting dogs involved in coordinated strategies, flanking prey, holding position, working as part of a team. This is thousands of years before anything resembling a modern breed existed. And it tells us something crucial. Dogs weren't just tolerated companions anymore. They were becoming coworkers, and coworkers who don't pay attention to the boss don't last long in the job. That single requirement, pay attention or fail, is about to reshape the entire animal. If coordination is the job, then attention is the whole skill set. And nowhere does that show up more dramatically than in the Siberian Arctic, roughly 9,000 years ago, on a scrap of frozen ground called Zhukov Island. Researchers, including Vladimir Petulko, uncovered evidence there of what are essentially the first sled dogs. These animals were large, deliberately bred, carefully fed, and kept alive through brutal Arctic winters at real cost to the humans around them. And their entire value came down to one skill: watching. A shift in a musher's weight, a voice cue, a single gesture. The dog had to catch it and respond instantly without hesitation. If they wandered off, people died. If they stayed locked on, everyone lived. Which, if your dog follows you to the laundry room today, is the exact same software, just running on a considerably lower stakes task. By the time we reach ancient Rome, this expectation had been written down in black and white. Around 60 AD, the Roman writer Columella produced a full farming manual, De Re Rustica, and in it he tells shepherds precisely what to look for in a good herding dog. Dark or black colored, so wolves can't spot them easily at night. And this is the important part: dogs that stay close. Dogs that keep their eyes fixed on the shepherd. Dogs that respond to a nod. In other words, following wasn't a personality quirk, it was a job requirement. Written into a farming manual 2,000 years ago. For the next several thousand years, humans did exactly this on purpose. Over and over. Everywhere dogs worked. If you wanted a retriever, you kept the puppy that stared at your hands. If you wanted a herding dog, you kept the one that couldn't stop watching your feet. If you wanted a guard dog, you kept the one that tracked every stranger near the house. We didn't train following into dogs. We bred it into them. Nowhere is that clearer than in the Border Collie. The breed traces back to working dogs along the Anglo-Scottish border, and its defining moment has a name attached to it. Old Hemp, born in 1893, widely considered the father of the modern Border Collie. Hemp was so intensely focused on his shepherd that he would work almost silently, eyes locked on the human rather than the flock, reading posture and position instead of barking orders at the sheep himself. Breeders watched that and thought, more of that, please. That trait has a name now. Herding trainers call it eye. And it's not simple obedience. It's constant, high-resolution monitoring of a human's smallest movements. Formal sheepdog trials began capturing and rewarding exactly this skill in the 19th century, with the first recorded trial held in Wales in 1873. But here's the twist inside the twist. Not every dog was bred for this kind of intense, close-range watching. Some were bred for the opposite. Take a Great Pyrenees, guarding livestock alone on a mountainside for days. Or a Basenji, an ancient basil breed from Central Africa, built to hunt independently in dense forest. For thousands of years, these dogs were selected to make good decisions far from any human. To not need a cue, not need a nod, not need you standing 3 feet away. They love their people, but they were never built to be anyone's shadow. They were built to be the colleague who works remote. And in 2009, researchers led by Julian Kaminski put this exact contrast to the test. They compared dogs from breeds selected for close cooperation with people against dogs from breeds traditionally bred to work independently. The cooperative dogs were significantly better at using human pointing gestures to find things than the independent breeds and mongrels in the study. That doesn't mean one type of dog is smarter. It means we asked different dogs to solve completely different problems, and then bred each of them, generation after generation, to master exactly that problem. Some dogs were built to watch the horizon. Others were built to watch you. For most of history, that was the whole story. Dogs lived outside, in kennels, in barns, in fields, earning their place by doing a job. But in the 19th century, something shifted, and it shifted fast. Britain became obsessed with dogs. Queen Victoria kept a tiny Pomeranian named Marco, and her fondness for small companion breeds helped make that kind of dog fashionable across the country. In 1859, Newcastle hosted what's generally considered the first modern dog show. In 1873, the Kennel Club was founded in London, the first organization of its kind, formalizing breed standards on paper. The American Kennel Club followed in 1884. And notice, these early standards weren't originally about making dogs pretty. They were still built around function. Terriers were expected to hunt vermin. Hounds were shaped for particular styles of hunting. Herding dogs needed the exact physical and behavioral qualities that made them useful around livestock. But the world around those dogs was changing faster than the standards could keep up with. Charles Darwin noticed it happening in real time. In 1868, in The Variation of Animals and Plants Under Domestication, he wrote about how humans were now selecting for temperament and appearance with remarkable speed, reshaping animals not through slow, accidental pressure, but through fast, deliberate choice. Urban life was quietly erasing the jobs. Fewer people needed a dog to herd, guard, hunt, or haul a sled. But we didn't stop breeding dogs for attentiveness. We just aimed it somewhere new. Think about what that shift actually means. For roughly 14,000 years, closeness had meant work. Watch the flock. Stay with the sled. Guard the camp. Respond to the shepherd's nod. But now, increasingly, a dog might follow you simply because you walked into another room. With no flock, no sled, no camp, and nothing whatsoever on the line. That sounds almost absurd when you say it out loud. For 14,000 years, closeness meant work. For the last 150, closeness became the work. We stopped breeding dogs to watch the sheep. We started breeding them to watch us. Not because we needed information, because we wanted the company. Which raises the real question, the one that actually bothered scientists enough to go looking for an answer. If your dog isn't tracking you for food and isn't tracking you for a job, what is he actually getting out of it? Because your dog isn't stupid. He knows the bathroom doesn't have treats in it. He follows you there anyway, so what's he getting? The answer didn't come from archaeology this time. It came from a laboratory. In 2002, Brian Hare and his team published a study in the journal Science showing that dogs, even young puppies with almost no training, could reliably follow a human's pointing gesture to find hidden food. Wolves raised by humans from birth, tested the same way, mostly couldn't do it. Not because wolves are less intelligent. Wolves are remarkably capable animals, but dogs, specifically, are wired to read us. Then researchers in Budapest, led by Adam Miklosi and József Topol, pushed the question further. How far does this go? It turns out dogs will track your gaze, your head turn, the direction of your eyes alone, with nothing else to go on. They will do something almost no other species reliably does. Look exactly where you're looking, simply because you looked there first. That's not food-seeking behavior. That's social referencing. It's the same thing a toddler does when checking where their mother's attention has gone. Which brings us to the discovery that finally explains the whole mystery, not just what your dog is watching for, but why it feels good for him to do it at all. In 2015, a researcher named Takafumi Kikusui published a study in Science that measured something remarkably simple. What happens, biologically, when your dog looks into your eyes? Long, soft eye contact between you and your dog triggers a measurable spike in oxytocin, the same hormone tied to bonding and trust, in you. And that spike in you triggers a corresponding spike in your dog, which makes him look at you a little longer, which raises your oxytocin again, which raises his again. It's a loop, a literal, self-reinforcing feedback loop. And it's the same loop that runs between a parent and a newborn baby. So when your dog watches you stand up from the couch, walk toward the hallway, and vanish behind the bathroom door, he isn't running a calculation about snacks. He's maintaining a connection that his own body is chemically rewarding him for maintaining. Following isn't where is the food going? It's where is my attachment figure going? And every glance that finds you again pays out in the exact same currency that bonds a family together. That's not a metaphor. That's endocrinology. Now, an important distinction, because this is where a lot of people get the story wrong. A dog who follows you from the kitchen to the bedroom and then settles down calmly once you sit is not showing separation anxiety. That's normal social attachment. That's the 14,000-year-old monitoring system doing exactly what it evolved to do, and it's healthy. Separation-related distress is a different animal entirely. That's panic the moment you're gone. Pacing, whining, destruction, house soiling, genuine, measurable stress. Not curiosity, not companionship, but a nervous system in crisis. And modern life doesn't make this easy. For nearly all of dog history, someone was almost always home. A farm, a village, a camp, a den. Now we vanish for 8 or 9 hours behind a locked door, and we ask an animal we spent 14,000 years breeding for closeness to simply be fine with that. Some dogs manage it beautifully. Others genuinely struggle. That's not a character flaw. That's a mismatch between an ancient design and a modern schedule. So if your dog trails you around the house but relaxes the moment you sit down, that's not anxiety. That's just love with an extremely long resume. He's not following the food. He's following the relationship. So let's put the whole thing together. How did we actually end up with the Velcro dog? We never meant to build one. That might be the strangest part of this entire story. Nobody at any point in 14,000 years sat down and said, let's design an animal that will follow us into the laundry room and stare at us while we fold socks. We just kept rewarding the same small things, generation after generation. The wolf that didn't bolt from the firelight. The puppy that got cared for even while it was sick and useless. The dog that watched the shepherd's feet instead of wandering off. The dog that looked up fastest, came back quickest, held your gaze a little longer. We skimmed the most people-oriented animals off the top, bred them, and did it again. And again, for 14,000 years. Until eventually you get a creature who will follow you from room to room for no practical reason whatsoever. No food on the other side of that door, no job waiting, no danger anywhere in the house, just because you moved. That's not a flawed dog. And that's a dog that won at being our dog. So here's the big idea. The sentence worth remembering. The one you can actually repeat to someone tonight. Your dog isn't being clingy. He's executing a 14,000-year-old survival strategy that evolution slowly turned into love. That's it. That's what he's really seeking when he trails you down the hallway. And if you want the whole story compressed into 10 seconds, here it is. 1. Roughly 30,000 years ago, the calmest wolves stayed near our fires and ate better than the ones who ran. So tolerance became survival. 2. About 14,200 years ago, at Bonn Oberkassel in Germany, we buried a sick puppy alongside 2 humans, proving that staying close had already become family. 3. Around 12,000 years ago at Ain Malaha, a human was laid to rest with a hand resting on a puppy. Around 9,000 years ago on Jokoff Island, we were already breeding sled dogs whose survival, and ours, depended on watching our every gesture. 4. About 2,000 years ago in Rome, Columella told shepherds exactly what to look for in a good dog. And staying locked on the shepherd's eyes became an official job requirement. 5. In the 1800s, Victorian Britain invented the dog show, founded the Kennel Club, and quietly stopped breeding dogs to watch sheep. We started breeding them to watch us. All day. Inside our homes. With no job attached at all. 6. In the 2000s, science finally caught up with the history. Hair showed dogs read our pointing gestures. Mikloshi and Topal showed they read our eyes. And Kikusui proved that when your dog stares at you, oxytocin loops between you both. The same loop that binds a parent to a newborn child. Every single one of those 6 steps was really about one thing: stay close to the human. So tonight, when you get up off the couch and you hear it, nails on the floor behind you, click, click, and you glance down and he's just there, looking up at you like, "Where are we going now, boss?" Remember this: you're not being followed, you're being accompanied. By a partnership that started with a single wolf at the edge of a fire 30,000 years ago, who made one strange decision. He decided not to run. And somewhere inside your dog, right now, that decision is still running. Down the hall behind you, tonight, this has been Furever Legends. And if your shadow is curled up next to you right now, give him an extra pat. He's earned it. It only took him 30,000 years.